Good afternoon and good morning to you on the West Coast. We are here live on The Point, and we're going to be talking presidential logos. Again, alongside with me is my colleague, Rachel Kerestes, and she is our marketing guru here. And Rachel, the first time we talked about logos, we touched on what that means for the brand and how it plays into the broader communications, messaging, and personality that the candidates are trying to send. Just briefly explain, before we go into our next batch of candidates, what are we looking at? What do we want to keep in mind here?
Well, I think there's so many logos out there right now, and what we discussed last time really is that the logo is the simplest visual representation of your brand. And so we want to look at that, but also we're going to look at some do's and don'ts and start to look at some themes, because there's a lot of candidates in the race now, and that means there's a lot of logos.
Well, let's jump right into them. So the first two logos we're going to be looking at here are Bernie Sanders and Mike Huckabee. What do we see here, Rachel?
Now, Bernie Sanders and Mike Huckabee are probably two politicians that don't have a lot in common, but their logos actually have a lot in common. And what they have in common here is there's just way too much going on with both of them. We have both of them using different types of fonts, different weights of fonts, red, white, and blue, streamers, stars. Both of these have the same problem. There's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of things going on. It doesn't give you a clear picture about what either of these candidates stand for.
And so one thing I noticed with former Governor Huckabee's is he has the "From Hope to Higher Ground." Bernie Sanders doesn't have a motto, so to speak. What does that mean? Does it mean much?
It doesn't mean much. I mean, having a tagline is something that a lot of candidates have. Some do, some don't. Some will lock it up with the logo, others will, others won't. It's sort of a personal preference. I mean, again, it's just Huckabee is communicating way too much here. So we've got a tagline, we've got his name, we've got the year, we've got the stars, we've got this swoosh, we've got a line. It's just a whole lot of stuff going on there, and none of it is particularly meaningful.
All right, well, let's see what our next two show here. And Ben Carson and Rick Santorum.
And here we've got kind of the same type structure going on with both of these logos, big, thick, chunky type. I think really they're both trying to project power and sort of American dominance here. We've got eagles in both of these. There's sort of a bit of an eagle in here. I've heard folks compare the Carson logo to a B2B brand. Maybe this looks like a shipping company that you might see. And the Santorum logo, folks have compared it to like a sports team.
And how about Carson's? I particularly found his use of his colors a little interesting. And the color choice here over his name.
Right, it's a little bit. I mean, it's one of the few that is departing from the red, white, and blue strict color scheme. But the gold is not really that far of a departure. My main concern with this logo is, can it be scaled, and how reproducible is it?
And with Rick Santorum, do we see a little bit of a sports theme or a high school sports mascot here?
Definitely a little bit of the high school sports team. Go Eagles.
Okay, and our next two, we're looking at Martin O'Malley, who just announced his candidacy this past weekend, and former New York Governor George Pataki.
Right, and these logos kind of are both very confused. O'Malley is also using the strong, chunky type that both Santorum and Carson are using, but you've got three different colors going on here. The apostrophe is green for some reason. There's this little folded mark on the bottom of the logo. Pataki also using multiple colors. There's not a lot of alignment in the logo. We've got this sort of flag element. Both of these they're not as confused as the Huckabee and Bernie Sanders logos, but there's also not a lot of great thought. It's sort of like, oh, I had an idea, let's make this green, or let's add another color.
With Martin O'Malley's, and I was thinking back to Hillary Clinton's, how she has the H and she has the forward motion of the arrow, and being able to use that across all of her communications platforms. Is he trying to go here with his O apostrophe M, and we've seen different variations of that? Is that part of the process, maybe, in terms of developing it?
It may be. It'll be interesting to see how these all look within the context of the larger visual identity that these candidates are using. I mean, this could be a good bumper sticker in and of itself because it's sort of bumper sticker size. But we know that communications these days are less traditional and more digital. So if it doesn't play say on Twitter, like how do you turn this into a Twitter icon, for
Right.
example? Is it really a functional logo?
Okay, so for Martin O'Malley and George Pataki, we are going next to Senator Lindsey Graham, who just announced yesterday.
Lindsey Graham, and this one almost could be in the first category. There's a lot going on. We have different fonts being used again between the name, the president, the number. We've got a red, white, and blue thing. Folks have said this kind of also looks like the address sign you might have on your house, like I live at 16 Graham Road or something. Graham just announced his candidacy, so we don't have as much to judge this logo in context on yet, so this is another one that we may want to come back to at some point.
Now we're looking at all these logos. Now we've analyzed, a good handful or so.
Mm-hmm.
We think about the 50.1 brand and what we represent and what we try to, articulate. As being insurgent, playing offense. Do any of these logos strike you as having that real mantra, having that aggressive, win first mentality?
I'm going to say no. All of these logos feel very traditional in a lot of ways. None of them, with the exception of Hillary Clinton's, really feel like it was well thought out in that it was done by a professional design firm in the context of a broader visual identity and with a whole brand built around it. Most of these just seem like, oh, I need a campaign logo, so I'm going to put something together, and I like this color, and oh, we should add this, and we should add that. There isn't the same thoughtfulness behind these logos that we would recommend people do whenever they're starting a campaign of any kind, whether it be for a consumer product or a political candidate.
Well, that's interesting to hear. And this is just our second conversation of logos. I'm sure there'll be much more to talk about as the election rolls forward. And if you have any further questions, feel free to tweet at us. We're happy to address those. And I'm sure Rachel has much more to say. And we look forward to talking more about all things logos and brands in the near future. Thanks for joining us on The Point.